In this video, I would like to talk about the Python with statement. First, let's find a motivating case for why we even need a with statement. A very common operation we would like to do is writing to files on disk so we can save some information for later reading. And you might do it with code that looks like this. We open a file called myfile.txt and we're going to open it for writing. And then we can write some string to it, like hello world. Okay? And if we run this Python code, it creates a file called hello world. Let me delete this file. Now, this is all great, it works. However, what happens if an error occurs? Specifically, if the open statement throws an exception. Or if during the writing of the file, even more importantly, if the write throws an exception, right? Why would a write throw an exception? Well, there's many different reasons. The easiest one to think about is maybe we're running out of hard drive space. When that happens, obviously we cannot write more data to the hard drive. Also, it's possible that our own code raises an exception for whatever reason. But one thing that we should always do, as we're taught, is close the file by using the f.close. And if an exception is thrown between the time that we open and close the file, the exception will prevent the file from being closed. Now, in our elementary program, this is not such a big deal. The reason for that is because the program is going to crash out anyway, and the operating system will actually take care of closing the file for us. However, if a program is meant to be long-running, such as, let's say, a database server or a web server, exceptions don't necessarily mean that the program is going to exit. In that case, there is nothing that the operating system will do to close the file for us. And if we simply forget to close the file, that means we'll have what's called a resource leak. We keep opening files without closing them, and eventually the operating system is going to have enough of it, and it's going to kill our program. So we don't want to get into that situation. So how could we rewrite this code? Well, usually you would write such a code within a try-catch statement. So you would do something like this. Try, open the file, you would declare f up here. Inside of the try-catch, we open and we do our operation. And then in the finally block, which remember runs no matter if there's an exception or not, it runs either way, we close the file. Now, f may actually not be defined here, because if the exception happened on line 3 during the open statement, then f would never be defined. So we also need the additional check to see if f was closed. So this is what a proper code should look like. Now, even if we raise an exception here, or if our write call throws an exception, we will still hit the finally block and close the file properly. So this is how the code should look like. Great. Now that we've covered that, this is a lot of code, right? And the most annoying part about this is that the actual logic here is just these 2 lines, right? So we have 7 lines of code, but only 2 of them are particularly meaningful. Everything else is just error handling and making sure we're doing it correctly. That's not very nice, and that is where the with statement comes in. So if we were to rewrite this with the with statement, statement, it would look something like this. With open myfile.txt as f, so we get to give it a name with this as keyword, f.write hello world. Okay? And that is all we have to do. Now, what does the with statement do for us? First, it opens a file, and it also gives it a name f. Subsequently, it also will call f.close when the with statement goes out of scope. So here, as soon as we get to line 13, the scope of the with statement will end, and f.close will be called. even if an exception is thrown, it will be called as well. Okay, so it gives us the exact same semantics as we had up here with all this try-catch. However, now with just 2 lines of code. Okay. Now, the with statement can be used, of course, with opening files, but you can also actually use the with statement on your own classes. And let me demonstrate how you can do that. Suppose you have a class called my class, and let's give it a method that says print hello. Very simple class, okay? And the way we use it is class equals my class, c.print hello. Let's make sure this works. Great, hello is printed. Okay, now let us imagine that we actually need to do some cleanup when the class is done, just like we need to close a file when we're done writing to the file. So we want to use the with statement, and we want to use it something like this. We want to say with my class as c.print hello. And we want to be able to run arbitrary code when this block exits, right? We want to do some cleanup that we wish to define. For that, Python provides us with 2 methods that help us work with the with statement. One method is called the enter method that has a signature like so. And another one is called the exit method. And it has a few more parameters, which for now we won't worry about, but we do have to declare them. So what do these 2 do? The enter method allows us to define arbitrary code that runs as we call the with statement. So it will run on line 13 before line 14. And the exit method will run when the with statement goes out of scope, whether that's because it ran successfully and is just out of scope, or an exception was thrown. So in fact, let's also add a constructor, and this will allow us to see the timing of when everything is executed. So here I'll print constructor. On enter, I'll print enter. And actually the enter method returns a value. And in fact, the value that it returns is the value that's going to get assigned to C. Now, we just want our class, an instance of our class, to get assigned to C. Therefore, we're just going to return the instance self. But we could potentially return something else. And the exit method is also just going to print exit. And it doesn't need to return anything. Okay? Great. So now we ran our code. We see that the first thing that was called is the constructor, which is right here. The second thing that was called was the enter method. So that the with statement executes the enter method and assigns the result of that to C, which is, again, self. Then we call print hello, so hello is printed. And finally, exit is called, right? And exit is called because the with statement went out of scope. So great, and you are now welcome to add any arbitrary code that you wish to execute before the with statement begins and after the if statement ends. And for demonstration, if we throw an exception here, error, we should still expect the exit to execute because that's the whole point. It's the cleanup code. So here we go, constructor, enter, hello, exit, and only then is our exception thrown. So great. Now you can define usages of the with statement for your own classes and types.